This is Bill Bradley. Today we have a special presentation for you. I had tears in my eyes for a big chunk of it. Think of the biggest mistake you've ever made, one you deeply regret. Chances are you were able to rectify it, learn from it, ask forgiveness. But Ethan Bherwani did not have that chance. While celebrating his college graduation with friends, Ethan took a substance that he didn't know was laced with fentanyl, and it was fatal. That's how quickly fentanyl kills.
I just could not believe what they were telling me. And I just started having all these flashbacks, me and my brother growing up together.
Fentanyl poisoning is the leading cause of death of Americans age 18 to 45.
You see this defendant literally circling and targeting Ethan.
Kills 80,000 Americans each year, and yet it's often not spoken about.
Someone needed to stand up and say, hey, it doesn't matter what your demographic is, this can happen to anybody.
Well, today we're going to talk about this epidemic and ways we can stop it. And we're going to hear about Ethan's life.
Ethan was one of the best friends I've ever had. Losing him, I became very lonely.
Ethan's father, Kamal, immigrated from India when he was 6 years old. Today, as he grieves for his son, Kamal Bherwani is on a mission to save others.
My goal is to save tens of thousands of lives.
That's coming up right now. I'm Bill Bradley. You're listening to American Voices on Sirius XM.
American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley is made possible by Ford, part of the American story for 121 years. Built Ford proud.
Before we talk about how Ethan died, I'd like to talk about how Ethan lived. He was planning on going to law school. In college, Ethan hosted a radio show.
This has been Ethan Bherwani, WBMB Baruch Radio.
On vacations, he'd send his family videos.
Hey guys, just wanted to say hi.
Played basketball, was on a softball team, loved music. Here's a recording of him playing Chopin. His favorite composers were Chopin, Beethoven, and Rachmaninoff. Ethan also played guitar and the saxophone.
He would play, we still have it. It's a white grand piano. He was my best friend. I am Ava Bherwani, Ethan's sister. He was the person that I could go to for anything and everything. I'm so grateful because I don't think I could have ever had a better brother. He was the best that there is. And so I grew up feeling like no matter, how close of best friends I could have, there was never anyone that was going to understand me as much as my brother Ethan. There were even the small things where he was the person I could go to when I was hurting from a breakup, which most people wouldn't really talk to their older brother. He was so encouraging, and he would tell me things like, you are amazing and you're so smart and I can't wait to see all the things you do with your life. And I would, tell him the same. I remember we had a meeting with the doctors the third day that he was there, and they told us, they said he basically has no chance of waking up. And I remember I just went outside after that meeting into the hallways of this hospital in Connecticut, and I just started banging my head into the floor because I just could not believe what they were telling me. And I just started having all these flashbacks of me and my brother laughing and me and my brother growing up together and us only having each other for every single day. And I was not understanding. I felt like someone was playing a trick on me, or this was just a complete unreal lie, nightmare. I was just wanting to not accept it. Things like this are usually hushed, and when people die from fentanyl poisoning, their families brush it under the rug because they don't know how to address it, because there's so much shame around it. I think everything my father is doing and has done since my brother passed really speaks to his love for us, and specifically his love for my brother Ethan. He was so intelligent. He graduated valedictorian of his high school class. Like, we are Guyanese and Indian. Someone needed to stand up and say, hey, it doesn't matter what your demographic is. This can happen to anybody.
I'm joined now by Ethan's father, Kamal Bherwani. Kamal is a man who immigrated to America in search of a better life for himself and his family. And now he's on a mission to save other American families. Kamal has a background in government, was the CIO of the Health and Human Services agencies for New York City. Now he's on a mission to spread awareness of fentanyl poisoning. Kamal created a free video game to teach kids about the dangers of fentanyl. The game is called Joanna's Vision. Kamal also worked on legislation in Maryland. It requires AED kits in public spaces to contain naloxone, which can reverse fentanyl's effects. The bill passed unanimously. On the day of Ethan's funeral, Kamal started a foundation to help prevent deaths from fentanyl. It's called Preclivity. Kamal Bherwani is here with me now. Kamal, welcome to American Voices.
Thank you, Senator Bradley, for having me on.
We're so sorry to hear about your son, Ethan. Can you tell us exactly what happened to him?
Yes, in the early morning hours of May 18th, 2021, my life turned on a dime and will never be the same again. Ethan had left the day before with his friends to celebrate his graduation from college and then moving on to law school. He asked if he can go to the Mohegan Sun, which is a casino in Connecticut, with two of his friends. And I told him, it's your call. And the criminal trial, the family watched a series of videos. They got dinner with his friends and him. I saw what happened to him the entire night. Casinos have video surveillance everywhere, primarily to protect themselves. He was elated. He was on a trip with his friends. He was graduating college. He was coming out of a pandemic. He had every reason to be excited and happy. And it showed on the videotape that we saw that he had a pep in his step. He was in a very happy place. And that's where he lost sight of the fact that he should say no, but also it wasn't maybe drilled into him enough. Maybe I didn't do enough of a job explaining to him the dangers of fentanyl. I always told him, don't do drugs. That was never acceptable in the household. But I never said, look, if you do drugs, make sure you know what the hell's in it, because it might kill you. And that conversation I never had because I didn't have the awareness about how deadly this thing was. And it led up to about 2:00 in the morning on the 18th. He met up with a stranger, right? Someone approached him and they had a brief conversation, pointed to the bathroom. They went to the bathroom together. And that person, I can say his name because he's been convicted in a criminal court, Gerard Santiago, who is 44 years old and has had a long history of drug distribution and arrests, offered him. And I guess Ethan was looking for something. Ethan didn't say no. He should have said no, but he said okay. And they went to the bathroom. There was an exchange of dollars for drugs. And he had no idea that fentanyl was in what he was taking. He didn't ask for fentanyl. He had never tried opioids in his life. And Ethan ingested it. I believe it was cocaine. And 15 minutes later, he collapsed at a blackjack table. You just watch the video and you just wait. How long will it be until someone shows up and helps my son? And you just wait. It took them 11 minutes to get to him. And from that point forward, he laid on the ground with no medical intervention. And by the time they got to him, they were able to revive him, but his brain had gone too long without oxygen. And he never regained consciousness and was declared brain dead several days later.
Oh, what a terrible thing.
The last thing I could have ever imagined was that something like this would ever happen to him. I could never imagine him taking an illicit drug like that from a stranger. And you can give someone naloxone, also commonly known as Narcan. It's the most effective way to reverse a fentanyl overdose. And a doctor testified at the criminal trial about this. If they'd given him naloxone in the first 3 minutes, he would have been fine. And they didn't, because there was no awareness at the casino that they should even do that.
I was deeply disturbed when I first watched the video.
That's Deidre Daly, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Connecticut.
You see this defendant literally circling and targeting Ethan. And then, of course, the great tragedy is when Ethan collapsed. Gerard Santiago did absolutely nothing, right? He could have said, I saw him using drugs. Get Narcan. After he knows that a drug that he sold killed this young man, he then continued to sell.
Oh, Kamal, you're speaking from a searing experience. You know, you differentiate between an overdose and fentanyl poisoning. Why is that distinction important in this fight you're waging?
But I think an overdose is something that you do to yourself because it's you make a voluntary decision to ingest a certain type of drugs. And a poisoning is when you're given something and you don't have no idea what it is. Someone does it to you. And in fact, the judge made this distinction, and I can read from the transcript. Judge Meyer at the criminal trial said, it was suggested today that somehow Ethan assumed the risk. He didn't assume the risk. If you sell poison to someone, you've sold poison to someone. It's the person who sells the poison as a line of business that's the most responsible. So Ethan had no idea that fentanyl would be mixed into what he was taking. And when the first one to say he should not have taken anything, right? I'm not in denial of his actions, but he also shouldn't have paid such a heavy penalty for it. He shouldn't have died for it. The dealer got 8 years in jail with 3 years of heavily supervised release. The casino so far has paid nothing for their inaction or negligence. And any monetary damage would go directly into Preclivity, the nonprofit I've set up, whose only goal is to significantly reduce fentanyl debts. There isn't a dollar that would be routed back to Ethan's family. And then through the tremendous work of the DEA, there was an investigation that lasted 2 years that gathered the evidence in order for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Connecticut to prosecute the case. So it took a monumental effort on my part and my family's part to bring this case to justice.
I try and have empathy for everyone, and I struggle to feel sorry for the dealer, Gerard Santiago. I spoke to him in the courtroom myself on the day of his sentencing, and I told him, I said, I hope that one day, if you ever come out of prison and you can get a job, I hope you get a job that helps people and helps people heal, not a job that hurts people and preys on them and does all these evil things just for money. He didn't respond directly to me. It was really just a chance for me to speak to the judge. But at the end, I turned to him and I said that this is my wish for you. And I reminded him that you stood there and you were the only person in the building with the information of what you just did with my brother in the bathroom, and you still didn't help him. He made eye contact several times with me over like 6 months because every time I would walk into the courtroom for a trial hearing, I would just look at him because I wanted him to know that this is his sister and that I am not going to let up.
My name is Jacob. I'm one of Ethan's best friends. I went to the sentencing of the guy who sold Ethan the fentanyl. I was in the back behind Ethan's family. I was with also a couple of our other friends who have been going through the same thing we have and just really missing him. Ethan was one of the best friends I've ever had. He was really someone you could depend on at all times. He was very excellent in school and socially. He can make friends really easily. He was one of those people you can just naturally connect with anyone, any age, any background. I never recorded any of the music that we made together or played together. We never thought to because we always thought we'd be together for life, and I was very depressed when it happened, and I will always miss him. The friend he was to me, I still haven't found another. It felt like we were brothers. Losing him was losing a part of me.
So, Kamal, you're doing so much to help people across the country to save them from the threat. And, it's very difficult to take one's grief and turn it into purpose to help others. But that's what you've done. So, how did you go about creating, for example, the video game Johanna's Vision?
Yeah, the day of Ethan's funeral, I decided to come clean. In his eulogy, I spoke about what happened to him. It was important for me to have transparency on the issue, really talk openly about what happened to him in front of his his family and friends. And that day I created Preclivity, and I said to myself, what would he have wanted me to do? What would have Ethan wanted? Because I knew he didn't want to die. And I knew that he'd be angry about what happened to him. And he'd want someone to do something about it. And I turned that pain into, passion and purpose as a result of trying to also heal myself. So we started with the idea of what are the issues? Where are the gaps in society that lead to 80,000 people per year dying? One is the supply of fentanyl to the country. The other is awareness, or the lack of awareness about how deadly this is, and it can happen to anyone. And then how can you have harm reduction, which is naloxone and Narcan, and how can you deal with the criminal justice issues?
You actually helped pass legislation in Maryland so that AED kits in public are required to contain naloxone.
Yeah, AED boxes are everywhere. They are the boxes that have defibrillators that are used when someone has a heart attack. You'll see them at gyms and airports or restaurants. And I thought, even though this is a leading cause of death for young people, naloxone is nowhere to be found, right? If someone were to drop in a restaurant, you have about 3 minutes to get to them and give them naloxone, which is a nasal spray, to revive them. It's like a miracle drug. You have 3 minutes to get to them before brain damage starts to set in. In my son's case, it was 11 minutes, and his brain was too far gone. So I said, what would be the easiest way to get naloxone out there? And that is to leverage existing legislation and leverage existing infrastructure to put naloxone inside this box that has an AED device. This way, you would know immediately, let's look for the AED device, let's get naloxone. The moment you see a young person, collapse, just give them naloxone. It really has no side effects, and you might just save their life.
What was it like for you when it passed unanimously? How did you feel when that happened?
I was elated. It was a moment that makes you break down into tears because it was such an important piece of legislation. And Maryland was the first in the country to do that by law. And we hope to expand that to other states now. We started with Senator Smith. I sat down with Senator Smith, and he listened to the story, and to his credit, pushed the bill, and the governor signed it. Governor Westmore signed it into law earlier this year. But we want to expand it to private establishments, not just public places, and also expand it throughout the country because naloxone is very cheap. It's $45, and it's over the counter for a 3-year shelf life. So it's very cheap to kind of save a lot of lives.
It's amazing.
And in the awareness category, I decided that we needed to reach kids in a way that they wanted to be reached. So we created this game called Joanna's Vision. It took a year and a team of 40 people to come up with the script, the plot, the characters, the animations, the graphics, the creative aspects to really, follow this young girl, Joanna, who loses her brother and goes on a quest for justice on bringing the people who killed him to justice. And it's completely free. There are no ads.
They say my brother died of an overdose, but I don't buy it. I'm Joanna, and I've made a vow to find those responsible for his death.
And along the way, she gets to experience what a fentanyl overdose or poisoning looks like and what to do about it to save people.
Now, I'll use all my powers to see that justice is done, no matter what it takes.
So it's really a way of training kids or teaching kids, getting awareness to them about, number one, don't do it, right? Think twice. That's what Preclivity is about. Think before you act. And then if you do see someone have these certain symptoms, give them Narcan or naloxone right away, and you'll save their life.
And in addition to Joanna's Vision, the game, and the naloxone and AED kits, you spend time talking about fentanyl to kids and parents. So you're really attacking the problem from all fronts. What other moments have you had that made you feel you're making some difference?
Well, talking to parents and kids is certainly top of my list because I see the look on their faces when I go through Ethan's story because they get the idea that it can happen to them. I think that's a key issue. You have to relate to people that it can happen to them, right? One of the reasons we shut down the whole world over a pandemic is everyone thought they could get it, right? When no one thinks they can get it, they don't pay attention to the issue, right? So here, that's one of my most rewarding things to talk to parents and to young kids and see their reactions when I talk about what happened to Ethan and how big the scope of the problem is. Another one was recent. One of our friends who knew Ethan very well, their daughter saved someone with naloxone recently as a result of the awareness efforts. I was able to administer the dose and save the person. My goal is to save tens of thousands of lives, not just one. But it's good to validate that the awareness has had an impact.
What about you and your family? How has working on this effort to counter fentanyl affected your grief?
People used to tell me, you don't know what it's like to lose a kid. And no matter how many times people try to explain to you, it really doesn't resonate until it happens to you. And it's the most unfortunate thing that can possibly happen to me, right? You lose a piece of yourself forever, and you learn to live without that piece. But the pain doesn't go away or diminish. The pain just remains as strong as it ever was that first day that you knew. You just learn to live with this pain. And it doesn't, it's always pervasive. It's always in front of you. It's not like it goes into the background. And for the whole family, it had the opposite effect of what I thought it would have in the beginning. I thought it would bring us together as a family to heal together and to comfort each other. And what these events really do is they fracture families. And I didn't understand that till it happened to our family. And everyone healed in their own way, their own path. My path was to, dive myself into work and also create this foundation and desperately do whatever I can to save the lives of other people. That was my path to healing. One of the other family members decided to not talk to the family for a long time and be on our own. Another one, also distanced himself and went down a path of anxiety and stress. And my wife, who was the model of perfect health, had a mild heart attack through all the stress of all of this.
Hmm.
So it really fractures the family in the worst way possible. And then it's taken so much work and communication and love to get the family back together, to really heal the family properly and reestablish a strong foundation, because really that foundation was completely shattered.
How did you do that?
Patience. In the beginning, I was angry. I said, what do you mean we're not healing together? We just lost someone. We just lost our child. We just lost your brother. And I realized that I needed to step back and let time process the
Hmm.
wounds, because the reaction to pain often is anger. And that's your go-to. The pain's covered by this layer of anger, and that anger has to dissipate and burn off. And when it burns off, you end up back with the pain because it's hiding the pain. And then you deal with that pain. And part of it was family therapy, part of it was grief counseling, and part of it was really understanding what happened here and getting the person who did this to Ethan to justice. That was part of the healing process as well. So there were a lot of things that went into it, but I think time and patience was the number one thing.
But you describe these things, but you don't get a family that's in stress like yours was into family therapy unless there is a deep underlying respect and love for each other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And even that step took some time. Right?
Hmm.
It's only been this year, really, is the first year that we've really come back as a family, as maybe even stronger than we were before.
Hmm. We've been talking about how to spread awareness and save lives, but for people who are listening who have lost loved ones to fentanyl poisoning, what do you say to them about the grief? Do you have a message for them?
Look, there's nothing you can say to remove the grief. All I can say is turn your pain into something positive. I always describe this event as, you're going on your path, and I was very happy with my life, and I was happy with my personal life and my professional life, and it feels like hitting a wall, and you have to pick a path, and the path is, you can go down a downward spiral, or you can take the hard road, which is every day force yourself to do something better. And that is the hardest path in the world, because every day when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to take that path. I'm so tempted to go backwards. But the hardest thing to do is pull yourself up out of bed and say, look, I'm going to go on the other way. The other way is the better way for everyone. And that's what the person we lost would have wanted us to do on their behalf and their memory. So my advice is, try to find the things that your loved one would have wanted you to do that are positive to the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kamal, you're so clear-sighted that you're actually extremely inspiring. And you have done something that is extremely difficult to do, and you continue to do it every day. And your example is out there. 80,000 people, a year, and their families. They hear you, and they have a path forward. And that's a tremendous service. I just want to tell you how much I admire you. And I thank you for being here on American Voices.
Thank you, Senator.
And I thank you for everything you're doing in Ethan's name to save American lives.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. You know, I'm deeply humbled by your words.
I had tears in my eyes for a big chunk of it. If enough of us do not give up, we will triumph, even over this
Absolutely.
scourge.
Absolutely.
Before that day in the casino, May 18th, 2021, Ethan Bherwani had just bought his mother a gift. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a Holocaust survivor's account of trying to find meaning in a life when there's such suffering. The book arrived when Ethan was in the hospital. Now his family is left to do just that, to find meaning in this tragedy, and so they continue to help other Americans, to save others from fentanyl poisoning as they fight for justice for Ethan.
I felt like because his life was over, I felt like my life was over. So I didn't really think too much about my future for about a year. And then slowly I started working my way back. Took a lot of grief counseling and therapy to understand that I still deserve a chance at a future and to be happy, even though I don't have him here with me to enjoy all of it with.
We reached out to Mohegan Sun for comment. They declined to answer questions, citing ongoing litigation. But in a statement sent to American Voices, they said, quote, "We are saddened by the death of this young man. They say they are working with law enforcement and that this national fentanyl epidemic must be addressed at every turn."
American Voices is produced by Devorah Clark. The show was recorded by Mark Aflalo.
American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley is made possible by Ford, part of the American story for 121 years. Built Ford proud.
You've been listening to American Voices on Sirius XM. I'm Bill Bradley.